He began on the blacktops of Natchitoches, Louisiana, and ended up playing in a palace.
Freezes Jordan, spins inside, reverses, hits it off the high glass! Spectacular! 87-79 Charlotte. Joe D with a long gun. And he's up and over the 15,000-point plateau.
Oh yeah, the kid could play. 14 years of scoring, defending, and winning 2 NBA titles in Detroit proved that. And now from the front office, he continues to lead by example. From role player to role model. From the good Joe of the bad boys to president of the Pistons. The journey of Joe Dumars is a profile in humility, humanity, and hard work. Proof that nice guys can and do finish first. Hi again, everyone. I'm Stuart Scott. You know, the question is often asked, what's in a name? Well, some names come to symbolize qualities we value and are attached to the highest honors attainable in every field, including sports. The football team that overcomes all obstacles to win the Super Bowl is awarded the Vince Lombardi Trophy. The Red Auerbach Trophy is given annually to the NBA's Coach of the Year, and the NBA player who receives the league's Sportsmanship Award is handed the Joe Dumars Trophy. So named because Joe Dumars epitomized class, dignity, and yes, sportsmanship throughout his career. As the quiet, stabilizing force on the bad boys Detroit teams of the 80s, Dumars earned the respect and admiration of teammates and opponents alike. What's in a name? If the name is Joe Dumars, a whole lot.
He's one of Detroit's favorite sons. I think everyone would say he could be a buddy of mine. You know, he's got that kind of quality.
Man, what a great neighbor he would have been. If he'd have grown up in my neighborhood, I'd like to think we'd have been great friends.
Probably the classiest guy that has ever been in this league.
If I had 40 sons, I would be like Joe.
I consider him a good friend. He'll pick up and call me anytime, just as much as I pick up and call him. And we always felt like we could be friends away from our work.
Joe was, he was a guy that I just always admired, man, as a player. I mean, I wore number 4 because of Joe Dumars.
Off the court was the way he was on the court. We couldn't wait when we covered his games during pregame warm-ups to say hello to Joe when he came back.
He is a better man than he was a player, and I think he was a great player.
I don't think there's any question about it. Joe is almost a model person. He's really almost a step above anybody else.
I love Joe, and not only do I love playing with him, I love him as a friend. He's a special guy, and our relationship, I felt and I still feel, is very special.
You heard them all. Favorite son, great friend, model person, step above, admired, loved. Just the kind of words and emotions the name Joe Dumars evokes. Over the next hour, we'll show you why. Dumars the player and Dumars the person, in his own words and in the words of those who know him best. It's all coming up. To start, the seeds of his character were sown down south in Louisiana, and that's where we're headed when we continue right after this. The sound of its name, Natchitoches, and in the simple fact that this quiet, proud Louisiana town was home to the family that produced Joe Dumars.
I was very happy growing up in Natchitoches, Louisiana. I was very happy growing up down there. It was great. I mean, you knew everybody, everybody knew you. Great small town environment. My parents were, when you hear the term old school, I think they invented that. They were old school to the heart, and my mother still is. My father has since passed, but I mean, all those traditional values that you hear about, being respectful, being very humble, hardworking, getting your education, treating people like you want to be treated, that wasn't just on a signboard for me growing up. That was a part of my household every single day.
My father, he was a special man. He really was.
Spent a lot of time with the family and trying to instill us doing the right thing. And I think he did a great job of that.
He always taught them, whatever you do, do the best. He said, if you're a street sweeper, be a good street sweeper.
We were not wealthy, rich, well off by any means, but we had a tremendous amount of pride growing up in my family, and we always felt like we were people who could get things done. My mother was a custodian, and my father drove an 18-wheeler. I delivered groceries, all 6 of his sons. When we turned about 14 or 15, you worked with him. You know, for me, I was excited about it because all my brothers had done it, and I couldn't wait until I got out there, and it was 100 degrees every day. And I said, there is no way I'm going to do this for the rest of my life here. And I think it was a great life lesson that he taught all of us. I think he wanted us to see how tough it is. Get your education, go on to do better things. And that summer, that was the hardest working summer I've ever had in my life.
Joe was the youngest of the Dumars children, with 1 sister and 5, yeah, count them, 5 big brothers. Outstanding athletes in their own right. So the drive to make his own way was formed in Joe from the get-go.
Well, the thing about Joe, when we was growing up, like I said, being the youngest, he tried every sport there was too. And Joe was good in all sports. He was real good in football and baseball. Joe could swim. Joe even skied. I didn't do all that.
I had older brothers who were very good football players. And they had kind of established a mark there. Being the youngest, you want to follow in your older siblings' footsteps, but you also want to carve your own niche. Basketball was the one thing I looked at and said, I can carve my own niche. And I found that it was the easiest thing to do when you can't go with them or you can't follow them somewhere, is to shoot basketball. You know, you can't play baseball by yourself. You can't play football by yourself. You can't wrestle by yourself. You can shoot basketball all day and all night by yourself.
My husband built a goal in the backyard, and he would get out there and he would play in the backyard. And we had the liquor store was across the street, and it had the floodlights would shine right in the back. And he would stay out there and play till the store closed. When it closed, then he'd come in the house.
The story with Joe and Mark, one just before Joe. Mark is my next youngest brother. Joe and Mark would play basketball every day. And Mark would beat Joe just about every day. And Joe just had that in him. I mean, he would cry, you know, until he was able to, you know, start winning. And I think that just gave him that drive to win.
Once I realized I was one of the better players, my first couple of years in high school, once it was like told to me, like, hey, you are one of the best players, then I threw everything into it. Then I threw all my time and energy, and, you know, I worked and worked and worked. And it was never to make it to the NBA at that time. It was strictly just to be the best player on my team, for us to win our district championship, to get to the state playoffs. Those were my goals.
But Joe never went home after practice. When Joe got through practice here with me, he went practice on his own. And his teammate would say, how did Joe get good? They don't know what Joe did. They didn't have that kind of mentality in them to go and put some extra work. I always knew that once he got a chance to show his skills, people would say, we knew it. It was just a matter of time that it was going to happen. It's that drive in him. I mean, if you know Joe, and the people that do know Joe, and when he was growing up, you know, he always took everything seriously, what he wanted to do.
That serious streak wasn't lost on Glenn Duhan, head coach at McNeese State in Lake Charles, Louisiana, just a few hours from Natchitoches. By appealing to Joe's sense of self-determination, Coach Duhan won the recruiting battle for the high school star.
He taught me early that he had the mentality to play. I really thought Joe would fit in very, very well here, and recruited him on those terms. You'd get the basketball, but we'd keep it as a family.
McNeese was the only school that truly, truly came to me and said, listen, when you come here, we're going to hand you the ball, and you're going to be the guy here. We're going to allow you to lead us from day one that you step on campus. So I knew when I went there, if it's meant for me to make it, I'm going to have a chance to do it right here. I didn't want to look back and say, God, I went to this school and I really didn't get a chance to do what I really wanted to do because of the basketball program. I knew they were going to allow me to become as good as I could become, and that appealed to me.
When Joe came along, we played on campus, sold that little place out. It didn't seat but 3,000. So we moved to the Civic Center, and it seats about 5,700, 5,800 people. Joe came in here and packed the place. Standing room only. People lined up, long, long lines just to shake his hand when he came out.
After my freshman year at McNeese, I was voted to the National Sports Festival team, and that was the top players in the country. Made all conference, you know, led my team in scoring. So right away, right off the bat, had a successful first year. So I knew things were going well. My sophomore year comes, and I have another good year. And I just after my sophomore year start hearing my name show up in things as a prospect down the line in a couple of years, just to watch this kid. And so for me, that was exciting, just to see my name like starting to be mentioned, like, okay, I think I got a shot at this. Now scouts are starting to come. I look up, I see Jerry West at a game. You know, I'm getting real excited now. Like, that was Jerry West sitting here watching. So probably around my junior year at McNeese, I knew then that I was good enough to play professional basketball.
Joe averaged more than 22 points a game as a 4-year starter for the Cowboys and is still the school's all-time leading scorer. But as you'd expect, his collegiate legacy is more about quality of character than quantity of points, more about steady leadership than stat lines.
Joe probably lacked selfishness more than he lacked anything else. He never wanted to be considered a ball hog, even though he knew by the time he was a junior and a senior that his skills were better than some of the guys that he played with. He never got frustrated with them. That was Joe. You give him a chance and let him be Joe. You'll never regret it.
Coming up, Joe steps onto the proving grounds of the professional ranks after this.